The Evil Within is a unique horror experience that I highly recommend, even though it does, like many other games, start off with an unbelievable premise that someone would be enthusiastic about doing their job.
Disgusting!
You play as Sebastian Castellanos, a detective with Crimson City Police Department, who, upon hearing that there have been multiple homicides nearby, knew he had to volunteer everyone else in the car for that. Upon arrival, Sebastian tells their cab driver to keep everyone else out, as he then breaks into a light jog, arriving at the scene while his co-workers have barely gotten out of the car. Then, when it's time to go in, Kidman tries to cut in on Sebastian's hot work action, and she is promptly told to stay out and let the men handle this, before letting Joseph take the lead, because after all, you never know, there may be something dangerous inside this room filled with dead bodies. However, after a long and thorough 10-second investigation, all they find is a single survivor who thought the best thing he could do in this situation was to sit down.
Impossible.
Luckily for us, we don't care.
I really don't care.
And we're able to look at the camera where we get jebaited. When we wake up, we're hanging upside down with an apparent neck injury from being stabbed in the eye. Because no matter how much you look to the left, Sebastian can't see what the sadist is doing. Even though he's hanging from a rope, which should have 360-degree turning capabilities, but what do I know? I'm just commenting on this. After we cut ourselves down and grab the keys that he happens to keep at a convenient eye level, we go upstairs only to trigger a wire trap because he did not keep that at a convenient eye level. The sadist then chases us into the next room filled with saws that have to be a nightmare to clean. Luckily for us, we're able to escape by going down this slip and slide that leads to a pit where the blood and sick of countless victims seeps its way into Sebastian's leg wound. But it's all O negative, so he's fine. We're in a locker now because I didn't feel like walking here, and the sadist is absolutely losing his mind that he couldn't catch a crippled middle-aged Sebastian. And he should be afraid, because after bathing in the blood of our ancestors, we've gained the mystical and arcane ability of lightly touching him on the shoulder, which he hates. And even if you do manage to kill him instead of going around his cracked out AI, the only thing that changes is that instead of him, his twin brother will appear to chase you out of the building, where all of your friends were waiting for you in an ambulance so that you can all drive off a cliff together. We then meet a nurse who insists that having a copium addiction is for our own good, before waking up in the wreckage of the ambulance where no one else is around. And now you may think that the tutorial is over, but you still need to learn how to punch things, how to shoot things, and how to stab things. And despite doing all of these things in succession, Sebastian still feels the need to start a conversation with the next person he sees.
Hey, are you guys from around here?
As if he's asking them for directions to the closest McDonald's. He then starts to clear out all of the enemies by dragging them past their tether points and slowly walking behind them to pick them off one by one, until we get to the next area where everyone is eating and it would be rude of us to interrupt them. But when we get to the bridge, they all decide that they want a piece of us, and our only hope of losing our pursuers is to use the power of parkour. We are now at the only easy boss fight in the game. Save first because checkpoints will eat your items. Once you're ready, simply do the following. Go to the house on the left and grab the axe. Go up the stairs and point your gun at Dr. Jimenez. Look through his binoculars and then hit the crank, open the gate, go through the door closest to you, down the stairs and diagonally left to the barn, hit the wall, drop the axe, go to the ladder, grab the other axe, open the chest, hit the sadist with both axes, shoot him with 8 bullets, and then go to the Winchester, have a nice pint, and wait for all this to blow over. After beating the boss by ourselves, Dr. Jimenez shows up again to insist that he was helpful, and follows us into the next area, where, after a short conversation, he convinces us to murder his brother and steal his keys. We also evict his tenant living in the one-bedroom, one-bucket apartment outside in order to pillage his belongings, which does make us look bad, but we did also save this lady from being burned alive, who thanks us by leaving a soul puddle worth 1,000 copium. Wow! We then find Leslie in the basement of this house, where we encounter a new enemy that isn't seen very often in the game, because it's invisible. Ruvik also stops by to throw us into a second blood pit. Except this time, Sebastian needs to beat up a bunch of mentally ill people, so it's completely different from the first one. And in the next room over, we meet another new enemy, the human spider.
A human spider, that's it? That's the best you got?
Who will chase you relentlessly. Unless you're in an elevator, that would be awkward. After barely escaping with our lives, Ruvik brings the building down on us because we didn't clap for him or something, leaving us in a hospital. There really isn't much to talk about this area. There's invisible enemies, a rat with a statue on its back, and a use for the unupgraded pistol. But then Ruvik, sensing that we're getting bored and that it's been a few minutes since we last saw him, gives us some puzzles to do that a 5-year-old could solve. And he's so impressed with our intelligence that he rewards us with a Joseph, who Sebastian is very concerned about. Just look at his forehead. We then heal him with the power of our friendship and back rubs, and for a short while, everything seems right with the world, until we get to this part, where not only do we need to save Kidman, but Joseph as well, because he used all of his eyesight earlier trying to open a door. And even after we make it through 2 long waves of enemies and make it to the top where we can finally put in the safe code and rescue Kidman, they fall into a hole right under their feet. How clumsy can you get? So we go into the hole and save them again because we're the main character and it's our job. And Kidman's so thankful that she offers in exchange for us saving her life to open a door for us. You're welcome. You can just do that? What? You can just open doors like that? Sebastian then lets himself be pulled into the ground in order to avoid that conversation, where he is then forced to fight the Spider Lady, who we find out later in the game is actually Ruvik's sister, so I have no idea why he's okay with this. And because murdering his sister wasn't enough for us, we also unplug Ruvik's internet by disconnecting these 3 people from this human brainwave machine, thus freeing them from the Matrix by killing them. We're the good guy though, so it's fine, don't worry about it. We then reunite with Joseph, who's sleeping outside on the grass. Do you want ants, Joseph? Because that's how you get ants. And he tells us that he had a dream, that he dreamed that he became the best in the world at opening doors. Sadly, he was unable to make his dream come true, as it took him 2.5 minutes to open both doors. Anyway, we managed to get out of that mess and into an even bigger mess, where we need to kill 4 enemies who are shooting harpoons at us, while a bunch of infinitely spawning enemies will be chasing us as we run through, and we also need to avoid traps. This can be quickly and easily done by shooting flash bolts at them, It will affect them even if their gates are closed. But I forgot I could do that, so instead, it was done the hard and stupid way of running around shooting them individually. Luckily for us, so long as we don't get hit after killing all of them, we can spawn our Lord and Savior of this area, the Chainsaw Sadist, who was nice enough to bring a checkpoint with him so we don't have to do all this stuff again. Thank you for your sacrifice. As we make our way up the tower, Sebastian had no way of knowing this, but Joseph was going through a midlife crisis. He too wanted to be the main character of his life. That's why he tried to take on two guys at once, like he did in his youth. But it only left him beaten and needing to be saved by Sebastian, who tells Joseph that he doesn't need to change, even though he'll never be a main character like we are, or really be good at anything for that matter. We will always consider him to be a good friend of ours, and that we will never, ever think any less of him than we already do. Thanks, Sebastian. No problem, best buddy. Hey, Joseph. Yeah, Sebastian? Never, 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 ever, ever, never, never, ever, never. We then beat the giant twins who were in the graveyard guarding this secret passageway, and we decide that it would be safer and more efficient for us to go into this bottomless hole in order to reach the church off in the distance, instead of just climbing over this pile of rubble, because video game logic. And the video game logic carries over into the next area, because this puzzle is not a puzzle, it's a to-do list. It tells you what to do. An instruction manual is not a puzzle. I'm getting a little hung up on this, but seriously, in the next room we find the last thing we need to fight in this area. The dog, who acts more like a bull with how much he charges at us, but all we need to do is wait for it to ever so gingerly press its nose into the barrel of our shotgun before firing, to knock it over and shoot it until it's dead. And after we beat the boss, it may be because we're close to the church, but Joseph feels the need to confess something to Sebastian. He says that he's poor. How poor is he? Joseph is so poor that he could only afford one pair of glasses. Even though literally every eyeglass store I've ever seen usually has a buy one get one free or buy one get one for 50% off sale. But that is how poor Joseph is. He can't even afford something that's free. So we do what any good friend would do when they also happen to be the main character, and risk our lives for something that probably costs $19.99.
But wait! There's more! Hang on to your seat, baby!
Joseph starts to feel guilty that we risked our lives for something he should have had a second pair of, so we console him and tell him that when we get out of this mess, we'll go shopping together and get him some contacts. But then Ruvik, who hears people making plans without him, is greatly upset by this, even though why would anyone invite him when he's the villain? But his feelings were hurt, so he grounds us like he's our dad or something. And now that we're underground, Sebastian instinctively begins collecting rocks. Because why wouldn't he? It turns out that we actually need them. So we go to the left, turn some cranks, and run past the new twin-headed enemies to collect a rock. We then go to the right, turn some cranks, and drop a trap on top of the new twin-headed enemies to collect a rock. And just like that, we're already saving Leslie and facing off against the Keeper of the Rhythm. Who we beat by dropping a trap on top of his safe fetus, allowing us entry into the caves, where there are more cranks and even more fetuses. Like a lot of fetuses. They're literally coming out of the walls. And our reward for making it to the end of the cave is for Dr. Jimenez to call us an idiot, and that our brain would have to be as big as a mid-sized sedan in order to have any hope of comprehending what's going on. And then Ruvik, who had heard everything, could not believe what an asshole that guy was, and invites us to his overly familiar house to perform brain surgeries. Who was nice enough to leave some recordings and notes in case we got stuck. He even stops by every so often in case we have any questions. What a thoughtful host. He does still try to kill us though, but he is making an effort, and isn't that what's really important? Until we find Kid Ruvik sacrificing a pig's head to summon the Kool-Aid Man. Oh, yeah! That's more important. And if a single drop of his sugary sweet goodness touches Sebastian, he will immediately go into a diabetic coma and die. But it's not all bad, because at this point of the story, we're finally learning the reasons behind why this is happening. So it turns out that a bunch of hillbillies are upset that Ruvik's family is buying all of their land, but the fact that they're buying it implies that they had it for sale, so this whole thing could have been avoided if these people would have been blessed with enough brain cells to understand that once you sell something, it's no longer yours. But I've lived on this earth for many years, so I know that that's too much to ask. And after we beat Ruvik's repressed memories, I really didn't. Okay, no, if you would just listen. Okay. We now get to play the clown level and meet another new enemy known as traumas that we never fight ever because they're a waste of ammo, on top of this entire area being a scam designed to take your life as cheaply as possible. What? But after we get to this door, it's finally over. After we kill Ruvik's sister. Again, I have no idea why he's okay with this. Until we get in the elevator, where we learn that in fact Ruvik was not okay with it, and that he was only letting us kill his sister so that he would then have a reason to take revenge on us. He's truly a terrifying genius and master strategist, as he then forces us to fight this giant wad of chewing gum with people sticking out of it. It's not as tough as it looks. And one epileptic elevator ride later, we are now in the city, where we go for a refreshing swim before encountering Ruvik again, who is determined to kill us by making us fight the most difficult thing he could possibly imagine, a copy of himself. He's also prepared a small army that is trapped inside of this tiny kill box to try and stop us. He is really determined to kill us, as is evidenced by this next area, where he sends out waves of enemies that have been expertly trained on standing next to precarious ledges. Ruvik truly is a man to be reckoned with. Absolutely brilliant. We then use our detective eyes to deduce that Kidman is in trouble. So we rescue her from all of the nice guys that clearly just wanted to talk to her, only to get shot because we got infected by the Fedora virus. And even when we show no more signs of symptoms, we're told to quarantine. Luckily, Leslie reminds us that there's another door we can leave from, and after some bullshit, we meet up with Joseph, who found a bus that Kidman hijacks, forcing us to fight Jirai Gumo twice, who's here to rip the top off of buses and get shot in the face. More so get shot in the face because the second time around, he's all out of bus tops. There's also a lovely intermission where the game wants you to have a shootout with these enemies, but clearly the correct option is just to squat at the front of the bus for 2 minutes. And after all of this is done, we need to save Joseph again.
Joseph, no!
Kidman does offer to go get life-saving medication, but we know that it would be safer to leave her here with him unattended. So we get the needed medical supplies and head back. Climb, 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 Sebastian, Sebastian, climb. Ooh, ooh, Sebastian, ooh, ooh. Okay, oh, what the hell was that out there, Sebastian? Look at his face, he looks so happy with himself. And after we save Joseph, we get to experience what it's like to be short while driving. Before Ruvik appears at the end of the road and throws us into a building. I would like to point out that the entire time he just stood there and didn't say anything at all, like an edgelord, because he was channeling his inner persona, Shadow the Hedgehog. And despite the rough landing, we're okay. And by we, I mean Sebastian and Joseph, because Kidman is still on the bus when it falls several stories upside down onto the very hard pavement before catching on fire. To which Sebastian says,
If you're down there, hang on. We're coming.
Let this serve as proof that Sebastian clearly holds no favorites in the workplace. Because shortly after this, Sebastian feels as though Joseph has been getting too much screen time lately and decides to cut off the only path forward, in the hopes that Joseph would go and get his own show. But that doesn't stop Joseph from making a guest appearance later on and stealing our ride down, that we can then only get on after killing the Keeper 3 times. What a unit of measurement.
God damn it. Fuck.
We then reunite with Kidman outside, who tells us that everything is not as it seems. Who would have guessed? Then Joseph gets shot and we fall into a hole, where we begin the subway section. Or at least it would appear so to the untrained eye, but it's actually a sewer section disguised as a subway section. You can't call yourself a horror game without one of these. At the beginning of the game, Sebastian was turning cranks to open doors and turn off poison. Now he's turning them to drain poop water. What an advancement in his career. And after making our way through the sewer, we encounter the boss of this area, who logically had to have been swimming in the poop before we came along to drain it. You're welcome. This boss can run, hide, turn invisible, and spawn ads. It can be very annoying on this difficulty. Unless you've upgraded the Magnum to level 5 with 8 capacity, then you can melt the boss like a grilled cheese. And with that, we're in the endgame. Starring Leslie, who made this cutscene way too long and awkward. There's also this guy that says it would be bad if Ruvik sees us. Thank you for that. But Ruvik sees us anyway, and we get to smack him in his smug prick face with a lantern, causing him to transport us into this battle arena, where Sebastian needs to fight several waves of enemies, from this high corner where no one can get to him. It's in the game, so that means it's intentional, and that's especially true for the rocket launcher / chainsaw sadist. Staying far away works for the next area too, because they won't shoot at you if you don't go through the door all the way. And at the end of this arena, the last thing that we need to fight is not one, but 2 of the enemy that we've already killed half a dozen times. I think Ruvik is tired of dealing with us, because in this next area, if he catches us, he doesn't kill us, he just brings us back to the beginning again, in the hopes that we would unalive ourselves, or get bored and leave. But we manage to stand in this elevator long enough to make it to the top, where we meet with Kidman again and agree with her that Leslie needs to be protected from Ruvik before doing absolutely nothing as he gets turned into mush. You had one job, and this gives Ruvik the strength that he needs in order to turn into Mega Ruvik, who has a really hard time trying to hit us because of the game's potato aim. But that goes both ways, especially in this segment, where we need to shoot down Ruvik's tentacle arms, and even more so after we get tossed onto this spike, where we need to hit Ruvik with this rocket launcher that the sadist was carrying ammo for in his ass. Where else would it be? And upon finding this information out, Ruvik is so disgusted that he throws himself up, allowing us to shoot him, finishing this once and for all. Except he has another final form. Good game. The Illuminati then informs Sebastian that they really like him and will keep him alive so that they can make a sequel. And with that, it's finally over. Sebastian wakes up and leaves, without regard for anyone else. And as he makes his way to the front door to get his fresh air, Sebastian wonders, was all of this really worth it? Would this count as compensable time? And to that I say, does this answer your question?
I am become Chuck the Sneeder of Feed.
If you made it this far, thank you for watching. Goodbye and good night. Never